Hi guys, just before we start the episode today, whatever platform you are listening to this on, whether it be on the podcast, Apple Podcast, YouTube, whatever it is, please support it. Please like, subscribe, whatever you can do. We want to reach as many people as possible. So please do that and we'll get right into the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Comeback Podcast. Today, I am really excited to have on the show Sarah Kneebone. Now, Sarah is the founder of Mojo Health Space, where she helps people get their mojo back from a variety of issues, such as Hashimotos, amongst many others. Before having her own health issues, she led a healthy, happy existence for most of her life. But in 2017, this all changed when she was hospitalized with septicemia. She then went on a complex journey of health highs and low, test after test, doctor after doctor, emotional roller coasters, dietary experiments, and a serious learning curve. She was eventually diagnosed with Hashimoto's, as well as a number of coexisting issues like gut dysbiosis, adrenal fatigue, parasites, and infections. And so began her holistic healing process, one that began with food and became about total transformation. So hence why I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Cool. And apologies for screwing up my pronunciation of the dysbiosis. I'll store that one.
And my last name, Kneebone.
Oh, sorry. God. Oh, God. Do you know what I normally do? God, I said Kneebone, didn't I?
Yeah.
What I normally do for everyone who's listening, I normally check someone's last name before, because I'm normally like screw up pronunciations, but I was like, I can pronounce that. That's fine. And I completely screwed it up. So sorry.
No, don't worry. Most people get it wrong.
The good news is I don't edit these, so this is definitely going in. Cool. We'll go back. So if we could go back to the beginning, I mentioned that you had a healthy life before, having any sort of health issues, like up to 2017. Could you talk us a little bit through that? We were talking just before the podcast began. We're both from the UK, so you probably had some kind of partying in your childhood, in your early years, but could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I kind of always believed that I had a healthy kind of younger life, because I never broke a bone. I was never ill with anything. I never went to hospital, even even though I had like risky hobbies like skiing, horse riding, that kind of stuff. So I kind of counted myself as one of those people that just had like a really strong immune system, and I've been traveling lots and never had anything wrong. But like you said, I definitely was a party girl. Went to uni and kind of stayed in that mentality when I went into my early working life. So I moved to Sydney, from Bournemouth is where I went to university, and then I moved to Sydney and just carried that on. But now I had money, so it was like times 10,000. And like we were talking a little bit about before, I was working really hard. I was working in the corporate world, working really long hours, and then partying the rest of the time. So I think it's a bit of a common thread with a lot of us.
Yeah. And so was that, so you were in Sydney to what year was it? You were saying it was just before the pandemic, was it?
So I moved to Sydney in 2016, and then I moved back to England in 2019, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in Sydney when this started. Could you take us through the beginning part of the story where you started to notice that something wasn't quite right with your health?
Yeah, well, I guess it kind of, on reflection, I realized that I was not in tune with my body at all, because I didn't notice, but I actually had a UTI, but I didn't notice any of the symptoms. So it got to the point where it was a kidney infection that got undiagnosed. And by that point, I felt like the flu, really, even though I'd never had the flu. That's what I guessed it was. So I went to the doctors and they were like, yeah, you've got the flu, get some bed rest and you'll be better. Of course, if you get bed rest and do nothing, then an infection, like, that's the worst thing you can do. So I ended up getting to the point where I couldn't even walk down the street. Honestly, I went to go and get painkillers, and it was like a 5-minute walk down the road, and I had to like lie down on a bench halfway through because I was just so white. And I remember I was moving house that week and my other half was like, why are you not helping? Because I was just like lying on the floor in the bedroom, just completely out of it. And my mum called me actually, and she was like, you're being weird. And I was like, I'm not speaking to Joe. She was like, why aren't you speaking to him? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not about that now. And she was like, this is weird. So I ended up going to the emergency room. My friend took me and they basically said, yeah, you've got sepsis. So the kidney infection had spread to my blood during that period of time. I'd gone from a bladder infection right through to blood poisoning. And at that point, it was just shocking, really. My heart rate was through the roof. I was like hot and cold. But they were really shocked because I didn't seem like I had sepsis, if that makes sense. I was still like convinced I was going to be working at this work event that I'd organized. And when they told me, even though it's life-threatening, the first call I made was to my boss. And I think that's when I realized that like my priorities were all wrong, because I just called my boss and I was like, I'm still going to come to this event that I've organized, even if I have to come with this drip that I'm attached to. And it was a bit of a wake-up call.
It's weird, isn't it? I don't know, like I think things have changed maybe in the last 5 years or so, but like I think there was a time where it's like it's almost like a badge of honor, isn't it, for you to put yourself through the ringer when you're first starting to go through work. And like if you and it's funny now when we've got like COVID and stuff, people never go into the office sick, but I used to sit next to people, so many people ill, and you know, if you didn't come in when you were ill, like it was it was seen as really bad. Did you feel like, were you putting that pressure on yourself, or was that something you got like externally?
I think it was a bit of both. But definitely like through this whole personal development journey I've been on, I've realized how low my sense of self and self-worth really was, and how I was just living my life to please other people, to please my boss, or to kind of fit in with society's shoulds of like, this is the only way to be successful. Like the only reason I went into a marketing career was because I thought it's a good career, like it's what looks good to other people, or it's what's going to make my dad proud of me, rather than being like, I love marketing.
and because now you work for your, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but like, you work for yourself, right?
Yeah. So this was like such a turning point for me, because obviously like I went through the physical health journey of like fixing myself, because I later got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, but I also went through the journey of like, who am I? What do I want to do? And like, what do I want to achieve in this world? And I don't want to waste any more time living my life for somebody else, which is essentially what I was doing. And so I retrained to become a health coach. And then since that, I've just been a health coach and also a copywriter, because I realized like in marketing, what I love is communication. It's talking to people. It's like spreading a message. And so I was like, okay, if I can get paid to create messages, you know, for health brands, and alongside that also coach people to get through some of the things that I've faced and other issues, then that's just so much more of a meaningful life.
I've kind of forced the story like to jump ahead too far there, but that's my fault. We will jump back. The reason why I brought it up was because I just think it's really interesting. Like similarly to me, I feel like it's quite a thing in the UK. Actually, I don't feel like we're raised to be entrepreneurs. I feel like we're very much trained to believe that we can't. Being an entrepreneur is maybe opening a bar or a shop or something like that, and starting your own online business. I was like, well, I could never do that, and I was actually pretty much told that almost throughout my life, and then particularly when I was in my job, I was like really told that this was the best I could ever do. And it was only actually through going through my health stuff that forced me to look at something else and realize that's actually a load of crap, and actually I could I could do a lot more. And is that kind of, so if it really wasn't for your health stuff, you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't have had that realization? Would you say that's right?
100%. I would have just kept going. Like it's almost like I was on autopilot, and I like had this career path in front of me. I was a marketing manager, you know, I was doing well, and it would have been crazy to leave that. Like that's how I pictured it before. It wasn't even a consideration in my mind. And then as soon as all of this happened, it was like, would have been crazy to stay.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you. Like, my dad is an entrepreneur, and I just grew up believing like that's something I could never do. And, you know, I don't have the skills, or I don't have the personality. And I just took myself out of that even being an option.
It's crazy what health can actually, like bad health can actually, because I was thinking about it the other day. Like, someone said to me, "Oh, you know, you're so brave for going and doing what you're doing." I was like, "I'm not at all. I've had to do it," and that's why I was just like, "It's such a blessing," even though what I'm going through is, you know, is very tough, and you know, I wouldn't have chosen to go through it. It is just such a blessing. Do you, in terms of like going back to the earlier part of the story? So you had you were in hospital. And then you got, so how did you get, can you take us through the next part of that story? Like, you came out of hospital, and were you totally fine then? Like, how were you then?
So I was in hospital for a week on a drip, and then at home I was under the week of antibiotics. And basically after that, my health just never recovered. Like, suddenly I went from being this person that never got sick to every single month I was having like bronchitis, or more UTIs as well, and then just getting told by doctors that that's normal, and that that's what women get, and it's women's problems. Just getting sick all the time, colds, flu. And I knew like, this is not me, and this is not how I've historically lived. So I knew something was wrong. And I basically just did like this deep dive of research, like you do, like you said earlier, you go into like a Google rabbit hole, and trying to find answers. And the conventional medical system didn't want to help me, because they just said to me, like, you look fine, you're young, this shouldn't have had any long-term repercussions for you. So like, not, it's all in your head. But that felt like the message to me. And then I actually listened to a podcast, the Ultimate Health podcast, and they were talking about Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And I was just listening to it like, I think this is what I have. Like, I just had this intuitive hit. I recognized all the symptoms. And I basically marched into my doctors and was like, you need to do this test for me. And they were like, no, we're not going to do it. Like, you're not overweight, all these factors. And I was like, please just run the test. And then they did it, and it came back positive.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what did it feel like at that point? Because I know sorry, how long had it been going on that you'd had the symptoms in between leaving and getting that, doing that test? How long had that been?
I guess it would have been probably between 6 months and a year, which I know I feel really fortunate about, because that is such a short amount of time. Like, most people that I speak to with Hashimoto's and other chronic conditions, I know that it's happened over years or decades, and they've been kind of fobbed off by doctors for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's part to do with the fact that I would not take no for an answer. And also just like fate, I think, that I fell upon that podcast episode, because I mean, who's heard of Hashimoto's? It just sounds like this weird Japanese word.
Yeah. But you say that though, and look, a lot of people have had longer times than that, but when you're in it, 6 months feels like 6 years. Or it's almost like the longer it goes on, you almost get used to it being like that, as sad as it is. And it almost, I'd say those first, like, you know, year to 2 years are the most difficult, because you remember how you felt before, whereas you sometimes, when you get to this point, you've almost forgot what it was like before. And in those times though, when you were going, had you come from the mindset that the traditional medical route will get me better, like take a pill and I will recover, like, and is that kind of what you were searching for?
Yeah, it is, because I think I just didn't know anything about holistic health, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, the way I was brought up, it was either medicine is medicine, and then it was just, there's these woo-woo people on the side that are just making stuff up.
Yeah.
And it was always like, that's weird, don't even touch that. Yeah. So I didn't consider it. I didn't know anything about it. And it was only because I wasn't getting answers. And then when I did get an answer, I didn't have any support from them. And it was just wait, this will get worse. We'll just put you on medication, and that's all you can do. And like, for my personality type, I cannot deal with that. I was just like, no, because I need to know why, and I need to like uncover why this is happening and stop it.
Yeah.
And so I just wasn't willing to accept that. And I think it was that kind of stubbornness that led to me being able to solve the problem. Obviously I went through, and I talk about this a lot, the grieving process, because I think anyone with a chronic illness goes through a grieving process, and if you don't, then you aren't allowing yourself to process those emotions. But I definitely went through like shock, anger, fear, disbelief, bargaining with the situation, and then got to like this state of acceptance where I was like, I know this is real, but I'm not willing to let this be the rest of my life. And then that's what led me to be able to kind of go into explore holistic health, because I was like, these doctors aren't willing to help me. Like, what other options are there? And the first thing I did was work with a naturopath, and that really kicked everything off, because I learned about all the other things you were talking about, gut health and parasites and infections and mold and all these things that can be happening under the surface that I then realized had probably been happening at a low level for years. Binge drinking, gut health don't go well together. And the chronic stress as well, of course.
I think you always, well, I say you, like collective you, like I definitely thought that you have this picture that, oh, I got ill then, so everything was perfect till then. There was just this one thing, and in my mind it was a tick bite, and that was it, that ruined everything. But it was like, okay, well, why was that tick bite able to wreak havoc in the way it did? And with you, I guess, why was it that particular UTI infection was able to do that at that time? And I assume it's kind of like a perfect storm of all the things building up at once. With your Hashimoto's, have you realized since then that it wasn't just the Hashimoto's, it was like a collective number of things that were built up together that were causing you a lot of problems? Or was it mainly that?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you've said. It's the perfect storm. And for Hashimoto's to develop and for autoimmunity to develop, you need a trigger, but you also need the genetic predisposition, and you also need leaky gut. So it's like you have to have all those things together. So I obviously have the genetic predisposition, but then from years of eating the wrong things, drinking the wrong things, living a really stressful life, all of that stuff, I had got leaky gut. And then it took was a trigger of an infection or the parasites or whatever, a combination to set that autoimmune process to go, basically. And then the process after that has been like figuring out what those triggers are and eliminating them.
For someone listening to this now, because I'm actually a lot better at it now. When I used to like list all of the things that were wrong with me in my head, I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to like go after that. And then it's like spinning plates, right? But actually it's more, you shouldn't really think about, well, in my mind anyway, it's not about attacking each of them one by one. It's about actually treating the body as a whole and going at it a little bit more like that. Were you a little bit overwhelmed when you heard about all the different things, or were you told from the beginning, actually, you're going to treat the whole of you? Or, how did that part of it go?
Yeah, I definitely was overwhelmed, because it was like, in order to fix these things, you're going to have to change X, Y, and Z. And it was like a total life overhaul. And it was that, I think it was like, right, I'm going to have to be a completely different person in order to get better. And now I realize I prefer that person and I prefer that life. And I love eating the way that I do. And I love being, living a healthy lifestyle. But at that point, I was like 24 and I was like, are you telling me I can't, eat kebabs and drink and and I've got to take supplements and like pay all this money for testing? And so I think it's one of those things that at the time it was like, this is ruining my life. And now I realize it's completely enriched my life. And I'm really grateful that it's happened at this age as well.
I wish I was kind of as mature as you've been about it. Like I feel like I was mourning the death of my old self for a long time. And still I'm a lot better now. And I'm so grateful for, I've got all these weird things. I've got this mattress in my bedroom now. I've got a mattress cooler. I've got like these blackout blinds. I've got all of these like little gadgets to like help my health. And I never would have looked at that stuff before. And now I'm like super interested in it. And I'm like, I never would have had that. However, like there are certain times when now, because I'm still in the thick of it, like I'm not able to do certain things. I'm not able to go on a night out, or I'm not able to do these certain things. I'm like, I wished I could be like I used to be. How long were you was that what you were doing? Were you mourning that, you know, the person you'd lost almost?
100%. Yeah. Especially because like everything that was set up in my life supported that. So like the kind of friends that I had and the kind of hobbies I had, you know, so it was like, I've got to reconsider all of this now.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that. My partner, Joe, is amazing and he supported me so well through that. And even now, like most of the time I'm okay with it, but sometimes I'm like, do you know what? It really pisses me off that I can't go and do whatever extreme thing and not have consequences for that, because sometimes even now it's like there's a cocktail of things, like you said. So if I'm a bit run down, a bit stressed, and my day was a bit too busy, then I'll wake up and feel like I'm hungover, and I'm not. Or I'll go to bed at 9 p.m. and wake up feeling hungover, and I'm like, that's not fair.
Yeah. But and so when you got to the point where, so you're working with this like more holistic doctors, and you know, what were you actually doing specifically to help your health? And could you take us through, I guess, the final, like more the happier part of the story where things start to get a bit better?
Yeah, so I started with my diet, and I feel like a lot of people start there because it's like a rational, logical thing that you can, obviously it's emotional too, but you can make choices. So I stopped eating gluten, dairy, and soy. I didn't do the full autoimmune protocol that you've probably heard of / tried.
Oh yeah.
Because at the time I was vegan. So it was like, how am I going to be soy free, dairy free, gluten free, and vegan? So that was a whole thing. So yeah, it was my diet first. And then it was like supplements to kind of support the deficiencies that I had. Like I mentioned, the gut stuff. So I did loads of testing around like parasites, candida, things like that, that could be kind of suppressing my immune system. And then once I'd kind of addressed, I also addressed like my lifestyle. So like I said, not partying as much, and just tweaking things. So like I would still drink, but I would drink like organic red wine rather than Jaeger bombs. So I could still feel young. And like changing up my exercise so I wasn't like slogging out the cardio and exhausting my body, and becoming like strong instead, and just like reshifting how I saw things. And then obviously changing career was huge, because I personally believe that you can't heal in the environment that made you sick. And I genuinely believe like a large portion of why I got ill and didn't notice that I was ill is because of where I was working. So having a purpose and like leaving behind that toxicity was huge, and the stress that it brought me, because I used to get home from work and be crying like on a daily basis, and people don't realize how much that's affecting your health. And then once I kind of done all that stuff, I felt good, and my condition actually went into remission. So I didn't have any antibodies and I was feeling good, but I wasn't feeling optimal. And that's kind of what you're talking about, where I think once you go on this deep dive, you learn that you don't have to just get through life and kind of survive. You can get to the place of like thriving health. And that's why I named my business Mojo Health Space as well, because it's all about like getting your mojo back, your energy, your zest for life. And I just wasn't happy to accept that I could not be ill. Like I was like, I want to be great. And I want to have a really fulfilling and rich life, and I deserve that. So once I got to that stage, it was the deeper stuff. So emotional healing and energy healing, and like processing childhood trauma and all of the stuff that's like really hard to face, but is holding a lot of us back. Because I think often we talk about mindset being the next step, but mindset is all well and good, but it's trying to convince your brain to think differently when there's a reason why you think like the way you do. It's because of what you've been through. So I kind of went through this realization that you can tell yourself to stop procrastinating or to stop catastrophizing, but until you work out why you're doing that, you're never going to be able to change your behaviors. And that's kind of the stage I'm at now, where I've like trained in breathwork and the nervous system, and I'm learning about trauma. And that's now when I'm getting to the stage of optimizing.
You're speaking my language at the moment. So first of all, I talk about it a lot on the podcast, that like my goal, and anyone who's listening to this, their goal shouldn't be just to manage what they've got going on and just to get by. It should be to get to another level. And my goal is to taste health that I've never tasted before. And I love that you said that. And also like the fact that you're talking about, so could you talk a little bit about, you're talking about trauma, and what are you doing specifically? Because I know there's loads of different things you can do that. I think when people think about trauma, they think they're going to go and sit in front of a therapist and talk about their trauma, but I know there's a lot of other ways of getting through that and identifying that. Could you talk through a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's why I trained in breathwork. I don't know if you know much about that, but somatic healing modalities are basically modalities that are based on the body, because a lot of the time, obviously talking about things is valuable, but sometimes you can just be, like you said, like re-traumatizing yourself by talking about it all the time, and it can be draining. And so if you realize that everything is energy and that emotions are stored in the body and our experiences are stored in our body, and we know that because of the gut-brain connection, because of the vagus nerve, your body is communicating to your brain all the time. And if your body is communicating to your brain that you're not safe, then you're constantly in a state of like fight and flight mode. I think a lot of us are, like, it's the way our society is. We think we've got to complete our endless to-do list, and we constantly think we're not good enough and we're not achieving enough. And so we've all got frazzled nervous systems. And I started realizing that a lot of perpetuating the autoimmune response and perpetuating this state of dis-ease is because we can't calm our nervous system and we don't have the tools to do it. So now I do breathwork classes with people, and for me, like even having my son, I noticed that I like don't have the time and headspace to meditate, and that if you're the kind of person that struggles with meditation, breathwork is really powerful because it's getting straight to the body and you don't have to convince your mind to stop talking.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I struggle with meditation. I've done a lot of Wim Hof stuff before, which I know is different, but I guess in the same kind of family. And I've had some amazing experiences with that. And actually, I've had good experiences doing that and then doing meditation, and my meditations are a lot better. Because I've done some Joe Dispenza stuff, and I would do that. Really struggle with the Joe Dispenza meditations, but if I did breath work before, I would have so much of a deeper experience. Is it so what kind, out of interest, is it like breath holds and stuff like that, or is it just like what kind of breath work is it?
Yeah, there's lots of different types. The one that I mainly do is a 3-part breath. So it's like it's all through your mouth. It's 2 inhales, so like into the belly, then into the chest, and then out through the mouth. That's quite an activating breath, because obviously you're taking a lot of oxygen in, so it's quite a powerful experience, which is why it's important to do it facilitated if you can. Versus like other techniques are obviously for like relaxation.
Well, I think with the Wim Hof thing, I've pretty much had like psychedelic experience.
The breath holds definitely do that.
And there's like one on YouTube that's for like 50 minutes, and I did it the other week, and it was crazy. But no, I really believe, and there's actually, we were talking before about me going to Bali. There's someone out there that does this different kind of breath work, and it's all about the nervous system, and so I'm really interested in that. So I'm probably going to take a look at that. So in terms of like where you're at today with your health, would you say you've kind of recovered what you lost, but now you're looking to get to the next level, or like where would you say you're at?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think there's been kind of 2 stages of that, because I got to a really good place, and then it was like pandemic, toddler, like baby, now toddler, moving back to the UK, like a lot of things happened, some family stuff. And as you'll know, with chronic illness, like when you have these outside events and stresses, that can knock you back. So I definitely had like a year after having my son where I didn't notice because I was concentrating on him, but my health relapsed again, and my mental health particularly as well, which is another reason why breath work, like when that came to me, it just really resonated with me. And dealing with family stuff as well, like it brought up a lot of childhood issues, and then I had to learn to process them. So but now I feel like I'm getting to the point where, like you said, I'm optimizing, and I know what makes me feel good. I know how to keep myself in a good state most of the time. Obviously, like you have flare-ups and you have outside events that you can't control, but I'm definitely in a place now where I don't even really feel like I have Hashimoto's. I don't connect to that. I don't wake up every morning thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I just have systems in my life in place to mean that I can feel good, and I'm still looking for ways to feel better.
That's amazing that you if you actually list the things that you've been through in the last couple of years since COVID, and like moving back to a place where maybe you weren't ideally looking to move back to, you've had your first child,
Yeah.
your first child, and also family stuff on top of that. Like that's a one of those in isolation could like knock you off your course, but you're still in the position you're in today. So that must be an amazing feeling, that it's almost like kind of whatever comes at you next, you'll be able to deal with.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say, actually, because I think sometimes you don't reflect that on yourself, and you don't like give yourself any credit.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was saying that to my business partner the other day. We look back at, like, we set a goal that we were gonna, and when we set the goal, we were so excited about achieving it, and we're literally about to hit it, and we were just like, we're not even going to celebrate it, are we? Because we're like thinking about the next thing, and you're not grateful for it.
I'm so bad for that.
Yeah. So going back to the times where, like, because I think it's easy for someone listening to this now, like hearing your story now, seeing you healthy, hearing, about optimizing health, they're like, it's very difficult for them to relate to that. And probably just thinking, you listened to a podcast, you went there, you didn't really go through, the really tough times. I know you did. When you were going through this, how did that affect like relationships? Like, how did that affect, with the people, not necessarily your primary relationship, because it sounded like he was like really supportive, but more like, I guess, friendships, co-workers, like how did it affect that side of things?
Massively. Yeah, it put a lot of pressure on Joe because I was down a lot and I was obsessed. Like, it was all I could think about. So like, we joke about it now when I say the word Hashimoto's, and he's like, oh, I haven't heard that before, because it was consuming, like all consuming, to the point where I couldn't do anything else. And like, I thought about every tiny decision I made. So it was like, if I'm going to eat this thing, like what's in it? And can I go to this event, because I don't know if this is going to be there? And, so yeah, it was all consuming. And obviously I changed career. So that was massive. And I couldn't explain to my colleagues about why, because I felt like it was a personal attack on them. And then a lot of my friendships were rooted in the kind of previous version of me that was wild, and all I wanted to do was go out. So I couldn't relate to them anymore, and they couldn't relate to me. And I hadn't found my like new group of people that I got. And obviously starting an Instagram, that was huge, because suddenly it was like all these people who get it and they're in the same position. And I've made some amazing friendships that are completely digital because they get it. And it's been amazing. But before that, I just felt so isolated, especially because the deeper I got into it and into the journey, it was like the further I was getting away from who I used to be. And obviously, like, because it's an invisible illness, people can't see it. So I think everyone just thought I was making a fuss over nothing. People from my old life in the UK as well, they hadn't seen what I'd been through in Australia. They hadn't seen the ins and outs of it. So they were just like looking at me like, you look fine. Why are you suddenly obsessed with this, talking about it all the time? And why are you making a scene? Well, that's how I felt that they felt. So yeah, it affected every single relationship I had. And I even had a family member tell me that my idea of health coaching was a fairy tale. So, there was that kind of mentality going on as well.
Things like that stick with you, don't they? Like when things like that, and for them, they'll never remember making that comment, but something like that, would stick with you. I there's comments that's been made over the years that I know they're not, it's not coming from a bad place, and probably they would have forgotten about it 5 minutes later. But yeah, did you feel like it like really created like a barrier between you and the people that you thought were the closest to you?
Yeah, I think it did, because it's just like not being able to understand each other's position, I suppose. And you like really find out who your friends are and who wants to make an effort to understand as well. And it's not always the people you think it's going to be.
Yeah. What would you say to someone now who's, I guess, in that situation now where they're realizing that they're going to have to let go of a few people, and they're wanting to actually maybe meet new people, you know, I know that you can do it, and I know it's great meeting people on Instagram and stuff like that, but like actually, I guess having like human interaction. Do you have any advice in that respect? I mean, maybe it's been a bit more difficult because you've had to come back to the UK and been in Sydney, but like, have you done anything in that respect?
Yeah, well, it kind of came naturally in some ways, because once I developed this interest in like holistic health and wellness, I started going to like wellness events and things like that, where obviously I started meeting those types of people. And then I naturally ended up forming connections with those people as well. And then also because I studied health coaching, I met a whole load of people through that as well. So I guess it's like following your interests, or you know, that might be more aligned to the kind of life you want to lead, and then like maybe joining groups, whether that's like virtual or in person, where like-minded people are hanging out, because it's like that realization that they do exist, but you just have to go to those places.
No, I totally agree. I think it's just about, you've got to kind of like force yourself out your comfort zone. It's kind of like almost like you've been forced to be a better person.
And honestly, I felt like a proper weirdo. I remember the first event I went to and the first girl I spoke to, and I was like, please can we swap details? And she was probably like, what are you doing? I was like, a friend that gets it.
You feel like it's like the first day of school again, or the first day of uni.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking back to like the most difficult times that you had, and like people listening to this right now, probably at their, I would assume they're, you know, at their lowest, they're looking for some sort of inspiration. Like thinking back to the times that you had then, what would be your advice to someone right now who's in the, you know, going through their darkest times and they can't really see a way, can't see a way out, they can't see a way forward?
Yeah, I would say like go easy on yourself and realize that what you're going through now can change, like everything can change. And also allow yourself to feel all those emotions, because they're going to come up at some point. So it's really important to just let yourself be really pissed off, like let yourself be sad, and like you are valid in feeling those feelings. And then I would say educating yourself as well, because knowledge is power, and it empowers you to be able to make different decisions. So I kind of went through like the emotional stage of it, and then the like, I'm ready to take action, but I don't know how. So it was like educating myself, and also finding support or hiring support for people that can help you get out of where you are, because you're not expected to know everything, and you don't have to do it alone. Like, even though it feels like a lonely experience, there are other people that understand, and there's professionals that can help you, but there's also people on your level that can understand what you're going through. So like creating your own support system. And also just like taking action, because I think it's the same thing with any goal you're trying to achieve. Like if you just ruminate over it, you will work yourself up. So it doesn't need to be huge, because like Rome wasn't built in a day, but just like little actions that you can take regularly and just add them into your routine, or like healthy habits that you can gradually add into your routine. And then you'll be surprised that the cumulative effect that they have. And then you'll look back and be like, wow, I made all these changes, but because I did them gradually, it wasn't overwhelming.
No, definitely. That's it's the compound effect of doing those things. Yeah, in terms of like how, I mean, we've touched upon it quite a lot, but I mean, maybe if you could give any more detail, like how is your life better now as a result of, you know, what you've been through? Like, what are you grateful for? Like you know, let's say your life had continued on as it was, and you know, you never got sick, compared to like how your life is now. What would you say? How would you say your life's better?
I would say it's better in almost every way, honestly. I know that sounds really cliche, but like I'm working in an industry that I'm really passionate about. I've met amazing people. I know myself a lot better. I'm wanting to up level myself a lot more than I was. Like I was just cruising. And my relationships are richer because of the things that I've learned, and like the people that I've asked to come into my life. I honestly can't think of any way that it's not better, apart from the fact that I have like 10 billion supplements that I have to buy and take.
Yeah.
But it's just like that sense of purpose, sense of meaning, and knowing that like my life is now aligned with who I really am, rather than this version of myself that I portrayed to the world because I thought it's what I should do, or I thought it's what would make people love me, like me, want me. Because now I don't need that. Like, I just need myself, and I'm the conscious creator of my life. Like, that's how it feels now.
Ooh, that was a good summary at the end there. I like that. Final question, and I didn't prep you for this, so maybe, you know, let me know if you don't know this off the top of your head. But if you could recommend like one or both, like an audio book or podcast or an author or someone that someone could listen to that could try kind of change their day around. For me, I always say like You Are the Placebo from Joe Dispenza, for me, was like, once I read that, I was like, oh wow, that, you know, this is something. Whenever I talk about business, I always tell people to read 4 Hour Work Week. Like, that's like a game changer. That is a game changer for me. What about for you?
Yeah, on the same lines as Joe Dispenza, I really love The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Ooh, I've heard of Bruce Lipton, and I've watched some stuff, but I've never actually read that. That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah, it's all about epigenetics and how what you think translates to what's happening in your body. I think that he has a quote. Oh, I can't remember the quote now. There's another quote. This might be Deepak Chopra, which is like, every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts, which I love.
Yeah.
Because you create your reality, you know. So that's huge. I love that. I'm trying to think about books as well.
What was that called? Sorry, again. What was it called?
The Biology of Belief.
Biology of Belief. Okay, awesome.
I'm trying to think of podcasts as well, but I feel like most of my podcasts now are about, like, because I'm trying to grow my business, they're all like business related. But yeah, I used to be I've got so many health podcasts on my list. I can probably like add that to the notes afterwards if you want.
Yeah, please do send them over to me. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think it's amazing that I feel like you're, you know, your perfect example of someone we want on this show, someone who's been through, you know, tough time and changed their life around, and they're so grateful for everything they've been through. And it's definitely the journey I'm going on. Mine's taking a little bit longer, but it's very, very similar. And so, yeah, I think you're a real inspiration for anyone who's listening to this, for me personally as well. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do this.
Definitely. And I forgot to ask, if people wanted to connect in with you, message you, maybe ask you any specific questions about today, how would they do that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at Mojo Health Space. Same with my website, www.mojohealthspace.com. I also have a Facebook group. So if there's any listeners that have Hashimoto's, it's called the Hashimoto Warriors. No. But just DM me if you can't work that out. And I also have just launched a podcast within the last couple of months called the More Mojo Podcast. And it's just all about different ways to get your mojo back throughout like different areas of your life.
Awesome. Well, we'll include all of those in the show notes. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of people checking those out. So yeah, thank you so much again for coming on. I know you've got to get off now to go and collect your toddler. So we'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you too. It's lovely to meet you.